The canyon walls glowed crimson in the setting sun as Zara Winters urged her exhausted mare forward, unaware that in mere moments, her entire life would change with a single misstep. The year was 1875, and the Arizona Territory's unforgiving landscape showed no mercy to those who underestimated it, especially a woman traveling alone. Zara had left Tucson 3 days prior, determined to reach her uncle's ranch near Flagstaff before week's end. At 23, she possessed the kind of stubborn independence that made her father throw his hands up in desperation, and her mother weep into her handkerchief. But with her teaching position terminated due to her unseemly habit of speaking her mind, and no prospects for marriage that didn't make her stomach turn, Zara had decided a fresh start was in order. "Just a bit further, Maple," she coaxed the chestnut mare, patting her neck. "We'll make camp soon." The path ahead narrowed dangerously, hugging the edge of Redemption Canyon. Local Apache called it the place where souls are tested, and as the loose rocks skittered beneath Maple's hooves, Zara understood why. She tugged the reins, intending to guide them to safer ground. That's when she heard the distinct rattle that made every desert traveler's blood run cold. Maple reared violently. Zara fought for control, but the terrified horse bucked and twisted. One moment, Zara felt the saddle beneath her. The next, she was airborne, her scream echoing off the canyon walls as gravity claimed her. The fall seemed to last forever and no time at all. Pain exploded through her body as she struck an outcropping, then tumbled further down the ravine. Rocks tore at her traveling dress, flesh scraped against stone. When she finally stopped, crumpled on a narrow ledge 50 feet down, the world went mercifully black. Vaughn Eastwood saw it happen from a quarter-mile away. The 30-year-old rancher had been tracking a mountain lion that had been picking off his calves when he spotted the woman on horseback. Even at a distance, he could tell she was city folk riding too close to the edge, unaware of the dangers. When her horse reared and she disappeared from view, Vaughn spurred his stallion forward. "God Almighty," he muttered, dismounting at the edge where she'd fallen. Dust still hung in the air. Peering over, he spotted her motionless form on a ledge below. "Miss," he called, "can you hear me?" No response. Vaughn didn't hesitate. He shed his heavy leather coat and gun belt, keeping only his knife. The climb down would be treacherous. The canyon walls were unstable, comprised of crumbling sandstone and shale, but leaving her wasn't an option. He began his descent, finding precarious footholds in the rock face. 20 feet down, his boot slipped on loose gravel. His hand shot out, grabbing at the wall, but a jagged edge sliced deep into his palm. Blood flowed freely, making his grip slick and uncertain. "Damn it all," he hissed, pressing his wounded hand against his shirt. The white cotton turned crimson almost instantly. There was no time to properly bind it. The sun was setting, and darkness in the canyon meant certain death for both of them. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Vaughn continued downward, leaving a trail of blood droplets on the rocks behind him. By the time he reached the ledge where she lay, his hand was throbbing in agony, and his shirt sleeve was soaked through with blood. Up close, he could see she was young and, despite the dirt and blood on her face, strikingly beautiful. Her honey blonde hair had come loose from its pins, and her breathing was shallow but steady. "Miss," Vaughn touched her shoulder gently, "can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, then opened, revealing eyes the color of a summer sky. Confusion clouded them, followed quickly by pain. "Don't move," he instructed. "You've had a bad fall." "My horse," she whispered. "Ran off, I suspect, but that's the least of our worries." He scanned her for obvious injuries. "Can you feel your legs, your arms?" She moved slightly, wincing. "Everything hurts, but yes, I can move." Vaughn nodded, relieved. "That's good. I'm Vaughn Eastwood. I have a ranch about 10 miles from here." "Zara Winters," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "I was on my way to Flagstaff." "You're a long way from anywhere safe, Miss Winters." He glanced up at the steep climb ahead, then down at his bleeding hand, which he'd been trying to keep out of her sight. "We need to get you out of here before nightfall." Zara's gaze fell to his bloody hand, and her eyes widened. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he dismissed. "That's not nothing. You're bleeding badly." Despite her own pain, she struggled to sit up. "Let me see." We don't have time for pleas, Mr. Eastwood. You climbed down here for me. The least I can do is ensure you don't bleed to death. Something in her determined expression made him relent. He extended his hand and she gasped at the deep gash across his palm. We need to bind this, she said, reaching for the hem of her petticoat. With surprising strength, she tore a strip of the white fabric and began wrapping his hand tightly. You seem to know what you're doing, he observed. My father's a doctor in Tucson. I picked up a few things. She secured the makeshift bandage with a knot. It's not perfect, but it should help slow the bleeding. Vaughn flexed his hand, impressed by her handiwork. Thank you. Their eyes met, and for a moment the dangerous situation receded. There was something in her gaze, intelligence, courage, and a hint of something else that made his heart beat faster. The moment broke when Zara tried to stand and cried out in pain, collapsing back onto the ledge. My ankle, she gasped. I think it's broken. Vaughn carefully examined her ankle, which was already swelling noticeably. Sprained at least, possibly broken. Either way, you won't be climbing out of here. Then what do we do? Fear tinged her voice for the first time. Vaughn looked up at the rim of the canyon, then back at her. The decision was already made in his mind. I'll carry you, carry me. With your hand like that, it's impossible, Miss Winters. Nothing's impossible when the alternative is dying in this canyon. He gave her a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And I don't aim to die today, do you? Before she could protest further, he moved into position. I'll need to carry you on my back. It's the only way I can climb and hold you at the same time. Zara hesitated, then nodded. Propriety seemed rather pointless when faced with mortality. Vaughn turned his back to her. Put your arms around my neck. Hold tight, but try not to choke me. Despite the gravity of their situation, a small laugh escaped her lips. I'll do my best, Mr. Eastwood. With his help, she maneuvered onto his back, her arms encircling his neck and her good leg wrapping around his waist as best it could. Her injured ankle hung awkwardly, sending waves of pain through her with each movement. Ready? He asked, his voice strained both from her weight and the effort of keeping his own pain at bay. As I'll ever be, she answered, her breath warm against his ear. Vaughn began the ascent, searching for handholds in the fading light. Each movement sent fresh blood seeping through the bandage on his hand, but he forced himself to ignore it. One wrong move, one slip, and they would both plummet to the canyon floor. Talk to me, he said between labored breaths. Keep me awake. Zara understood he needed distraction from the pain. What would you like to know? Why, Flagstaff. Family there. My uncle owns a cattle ranch. He offered me a place to stay after I lost my teaching position. Teaching? He grunted as he pulled them up another few feet. What happened? Zara hesitated, then decided honesty was the least she owed this man who was risking his life for her. I taught the girls in my class that women should have the right to vote. The school board disagreed, vehemently. A rough chuckle rumbled through his chest. Sounds like you've got spirit, Miss Winters. Too much, according to most men. Most men are fools, he replied simply. They continued in silence for a few moments, the only sounds their labored breathing and the occasional cascade of pebbles dislodged by Vaughn's boots. What about you, Mr. Eastwood? Zara asked, desperate to keep him talking as she felt his muscles trembling beneath her. What brings a rancher out to this god-forsaken canyon, mountain lion? Been taking my calves, tracked it here. His words trailed off as he focused on a particularly difficult stretch. Zara tightened her grip, feeling him sway slightly. Mr. Eastwood, are you all right? Call me Vaughn, he said, his voice fainter than before. If I'm going to die with a woman on my back, she ought to use my Christian name. You're not going to die, she insisted fiercely, and neither am I, Vaughn. The way she said his name seemed to give him renewed strength. He pushed upward with determination, ignoring the blood now dripping steadily from his fingertips. The canyon rim was tantalizingly close now, perhaps 15 feet away, but Vaughn's movements had become dangerously slow and uncoordinated. Almost there, Zara encouraged. Just a little further. Miss Winters, Zara, he gasped. If I don't make it, don't you dare, she interrupted. Don't you dare give up now. With what seemed like the last of his strength, Vaughn hauled them up the final stretch. As they reached the top, he collapsed forward onto solid ground, barely managing to twist his body so he wouldn't crush Zara beneath him. They lay there, panting, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky above them. Vaughn's face was alarmingly pale, his shirt soaked with blood and sweat. "We did it," Zara whispered, pushing herself up to look at him. "We did," he agreed weakly. She moved quickly to check his hand. The bandage was saturated with blood, and when she unwrapped it, the wound gaped open, still bleeding freely. "This needs stitches," she said, tearing another strip from her petticoat to rebind it more tightly. "And you've lost too much blood." "My horse is tethered not far from here," Vaughn said, struggling to sit up. "We need to reach him before nightfall. Predators out here." Zara nodded, understanding the danger. "Can you stand, can you?" he countered, glancing at her swollen ankle. "Together, perhaps we can manage." It took several attempts, but they finally stood, leaning heavily on each other. Vaughn's stallion, thankfully, was exactly where he'd left him, pawing nervously at the ground. "Caesar's a good boy," Vaughn said as they approached, "but he'll be wary with a stranger." To Zara's surprise, the massive black horse allowed her to stroke his nose while Vaughn retrieved a canteen from his saddlebag. He drank deeply, then offered it to Zara, who suddenly realized how parched she was. "My ranch is closest," Vaughn said, securing his belongings with his good hand. "We'll head there, get patched up proper. But my uncle can wait another day to see you, unless you'd prefer to bleed out on the trail to Flagstaff." Despite everything, Zara smiled. "When you put it that way, Mr. Eastwood, your ranch sounds delightful." Getting both of them onto Caesar was a challenge that nearly defeated them. In the end, Vaughn mounted first, then reached down with his uninjured arm to pull Zara up in front of him. The position was scandalously intimate, her back pressed against his chest, his arm around her waist to keep her secure, but propriety seemed a distant concern compared to survival. "Hold tight," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear as he urged Caesar forward. The ride to Vaughn's ranch was a blur of pain and exhaustion for both of them. Zara drifted in and out of consciousness, lulled by the rhythmic motion of the horse and the solid warmth of Vaughn behind her. Despite his own condition, he never loosened his protective hold around her waist. It was full dark when they arrived at a modest but well-built ranch house. Lanterns glowed in the windows, and a figure burst through the door as they approached. "Mr. Eastwood, thank the Lord." An elderly man hurried toward them. "We was about to send out a search party." "Santiago," Vaughn acknowledged weakly. "Need help, both of us." The old ranch hand took in the situation quickly, calling for others. Soon, several men surrounded them, helping them dismount and carrying them into the house. Zara found herself laid gently on a bed in what appeared to be a guest room. A motherly Mexican woman clucked over her injuries, helping her out of her torn and filthy traveling dress and into a clean nightgown that must have belonged to Vaughn's mother or sister. "Where is Mr. Eastwood?" Zara asked as the woman Magdalena, she'd introduced herself, wrapped her ankle. "Is he all right? Doctor is with him now," Magdalena answered, her English accented but clear. "He lose much blood, but he is strong like his father. Doctor, from town." Santiago ride fast to fetch him when see how bad Senor Vaughn hurt. Relief flooded through Zara. A proper doctor would be able to suture Vaughn's wound and ensure no infection set in. "You rest now," Magdalena instructed, pulling a quilt over Zara. "Doctor check you next." Despite her concern for Vaughn, exhaustion claimed Zara almost immediately. She sank into a deep sleep, her dreams filled with falling, bleeding hands and strong arms carrying her to safety. She awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, panic seized her as she tried to place her surroundings. Then the previous day's events came rushing back. The door opened, and a gray-haired man with spectacles entered, carrying a medical bag. "Ah, Miss Winters, good to see you awake. I'm Dr. Bennett. How is Mr. Eastwood?" She asked immediately. Dr. Bennett's eyebrows rose slightly. "Concerned for your rescuer. Understandable. He's resting. I put 30 stitches in his hand and gave him something for the pain and to help prevent infection. He lost a significant amount of blood, but he's young and strong. With proper care, he should recover fully." Thank goodness, Zara breathed. Now let's have a look at you. The doctor examined her thoroughly, paying special attention to her ankle. Not broken, but a severe sprain. You've got various cuts and bruises, but nothing life-threatening. I'd say you were extraordinarily lucky, young lady. Not lucky, doctor, saved. She met his eyes. Mr. Eastwood climbed down that ravine while already bleeding, then carried me up with one good hand. I've never seen such courage. Dr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. Vaughn Eastwood comes from good stock. His father was the same way, would give you the shirt off his back in a blizzard. He packed his instruments away. You'll need to stay off that ankle for at least a week, preferably 2. I've informed Mr. Eastwood's staff, and they've agreed to send word to your uncle about your whereabouts and condition. Thank you, doctor. After he left, Magdalena brought Zara a tray with breakfast and helped her freshen up as best she could while bedridden. The housekeeper proved to be a wealth of information about Vaughn. He come here 5 years ago after his father died, she explained while brushing Zara's tangled hair. Build up the ranch good, he fair boss, work alongside the men, never see him bring lady home before. Oh, we're not, Zara stammered, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. He rescued me, that's all. Magdalena's knowing smile suggested she wasn't convinced. Later that afternoon, a soft knock on the door roused Zara from her reading. Magdalena had thoughtfully provided some books to help pass the time. Come in, she called, expecting the housekeeper. Instead, Vaughn Eastwood entered, looking pale but considerably better than the last time she'd seen him. His hand was heavily bandaged, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone in pain trying not to show it. Mr. Eastwood, she said, straightening up against her pillows. You should be resting, as should you, Miss Winters. He approached her bedside, a small smile playing at his lips, but I wanted to see for myself that you were recovering well. Thanks to you. She gestured to the chair beside her bed. Please sit before you fall. He chuckled but accepted the seat. Dr. Bennett says your ankle should heal completely given time and rest. Yes, though I fear I'm imposing on your hospitality longer than either of us anticipated. You're welcome to stay as long as necessary. His eyes, a warm hazel that reminded her of autumn leaves, held her steadily. My home is at your disposal. That's very generous, Mr. Eastwood. Vaughn, he corrected gently. After what we've been through, I think we can dispense with formalities. Vaughn, she agreed, liking the way his name felt on her lips. Then you must call me Zara. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of ranch life drifting through the window. I never properly thanked you, Zara said finally, for saving my life. No thanks necessary. Nevertheless, you have my deepest gratitude. Not many men would have risked what you did for a stranger. Vaughn looked down at his bandaged hand. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd left you there. Still, you could have died, your hand. We'll heal, he finished. Dr. Bennett says I was fortunate the cut missed the tendons. I'll have full use of it eventually. Zara reached out impulsively, her fingers lightly touching his uninjured hand where it rested on his knee. I'm glad. The contact seemed to surprise him, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his palm upward, allowing her fingers to settle naturally against his. I've sent word to your uncle, he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. Explaining what happened and assuring him you're safe and being cared for. Thank you. I hope he won't worry too much. I also took the liberty of having Santiago and some of the hands search for your horse and belongings. They found your mare about 3 miles from where you fell, still saddled. Your bags appear mostly intact. Relief washed over Zara. Oh, that's wonderful news. Poor Maple must have been terrified. Is she all right? She's fine. Enjoying my stable and the attentions of my stable boy, Pedro. Vaughn smiled. He has a way with skittish animals. I can't thank you enough for all you've done. You can thank me by recovering quickly and not giving Magdalena any trouble. She's already quite taken with you. She's been very kind. Vaughn rose carefully, and Zara noticed how he held himself rigidly to minimize pain. I should let you rest. Is there anything you need? Just one thing, she said. Would you visit again tomorrow? The days promise to be quite long confined to this bed. Something flickered in his eyes, pleasure, perhaps. It would be my honor, Zara. After he left, Zara found herself smiling foolishly at the closed door. There was something about Vaughn Eastwood that intrigued her beyond his act of heroism. A quietness that suggested depth, intelligence in his gaze, and a gentleness that contrasted with his obvious physical strength. Don't be ridiculous, she chided herself. The man saved your life. Of course you're fascinated by him. Yet she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when she thought of his visit tomorrow. True to his word, Vaughn returned the next day and the next. Their conversations ranged widely from books they'd read to their respective childhoods, from the challenges of ranching in the Arizona territory to Zara's controversial teaching methods. So you believe women should vote? Vaughn asked on the fourth day, seated comfortably in what had become his chair beside her bed. I do, Zara replied, watching him carefully for the dismissal she'd grown accustomed to from men. Women are citizens, we pay taxes, we should have a say in who governs us and how. To her surprise, Vaughn nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense to me. My mother was the smartest person I ever knew, man or woman. She could read Latin and Greek, managed the ranch accounts better than my father, and still found time to teach me everything from literature to mathematics. She sounds remarkable, she was. A shadow passed over his face. Lost her to fever when I was 16. Father was never the same after. Zara reached for his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. I'm sorry. His fingers curled around hers. What about your parents? You mentioned your father is a doctor. Yes, in Tucson. My mother assists in his practice, quite unusual, but they've always been a team. They encouraged my education, though I think they hoped it would lead to a suitable marriage rather than radical ideas about women's suffrage. Vaughn laughed. I imagine your dismissal from the school was quite a disappointment. Father called it predictable in his last letter. Zara smiled at the memory. Mother simply asked if I'd considered teaching somewhere with more progressive views, like San Francisco. Why didn't you go there instead of Flagstaff? Zara sighed. Honestly, I was hurt and angry. I wanted family around me, but also, perhaps I needed to retreat for a while, regroup. Vaughn nodded understandingly. Sometimes a step back is the best way to find a path forward. By the end of the first week, Zara was allowed out of bed, hobbling around with the aid of a cane Dr. Bennett had provided. Magdalena helped her dress in a simple skirt and blouse that had been hastily altered from some of Vaughn's sister's old clothes, stored in a trunk in the attic. Senorita Alina left these when she married, Magdalena explained. She live in California now, send beautiful letters about her children. With her new mobility, Zara was able to join Vaughn for meals in the dining room and spend afternoons on the covered porch, watching the activity of the ranch. She marveled at the efficiency with which everything operated and how respectfully the ranch hands interacted with their employer. You run a tight ship, she observed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. I try to be fair, Vaughn replied. Most of these men worked for my father. They're loyal, skilled. I'm fortunate to have them. They respect you. That's earned, not given. He glanced at her, something warm in his gaze. You notice a lot, Zara Winters. Occupational hazard of being a teacher, she replied lightly, though her heart had begun to beat faster under his steady regard. As the days passed, Zara found herself dreading the moment when her ankle would be fully healed and she would have no excuse to remain at Eastwood Ranch. She told herself it was the peaceful setting, the kindness of the staff, the respite from expectations, but in her heart, she knew it was Vaughn himself who made her reluctant to leave. Their relationship had evolved from rescuer and rescued to something deeper, a friendship based on mutual respect and growing affection. Vaughn listened to her ideas without dismissal, challenged her thoughts without condescension, and made her laugh with his dry wit and occasional self-deprecation. For his part, Vaughn found himself arranging his days to maximize his time with Zara. He rose earlier to complete essential ranch work, delegated more tasks to Santiago and his other capable hands, and found reasons to be near the house when she might venture outside. You smile more these days, patron, Santiago observed one morning as they checked the new calves. The señorita is good medicine. No, Vaughn didn't deny it. She's unlike anyone I've ever met, Santiago. The old ranch hand nodded wisely. Some people, they come into our lives like rain in the desert, unexpected, but bringing life where there was only dust. On the morning marking 2 weeks since the accident, Dr. Bennett examined Zara's ankle and pronounced her fit for travel. The swelling is gone, and you've regained full mobility, he declared. You'll want to avoid long rides or strenuous activity for another week, but you're well enough to continue to your uncle's ranch if you wish. The news, which should have been welcome, felt like a stone in Zara's stomach. Thank you, doctor. After he left, Zara sat alone in her room, for that was how she'd come to think of it, contemplating her next steps. Logic dictated she should continue to her uncle's as planned. Her belongings were packed, her horse rested, and there was no legitimate reason to impose on Vaughn's hospitality any longer. Yet the thought of leaving him created an ache in her chest that had nothing to do with her healing injuries. A knock at the door interrupted her musings. Vaughn entered at her invitation, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. Dr. Bennett tells me you've been cleared to travel, he said, remaining near the door rather than taking his usual seat. Yes, she confirmed, unable to read his reaction. It seems I've imposed on your kindness long enough. You've never been an imposition, Zara. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten. Nevertheless, I should continue to my uncle's. He'll be worried despite your messages. Vaughn took a step forward, then another, until he stood directly before her. What if I asked you to stay? Her heart stuttered. What? These past 2 weeks. He paused, seeming to search for words. I've come to value your company, your conversation. The ranch feels more alive with you here. Vaughn, I know it's sudden, he continued, his normally confident voice tinged with uncertainty. And perhaps inappropriate. You came here by accident, not choice, but I find myself dreading the thought of you leaving. Zara stood, narrowing the distance between them. Are you saying you have feelings for me? His eyes met hers, unflinching. I'm saying I believe I'm falling in love with you, Zara Winters, and if you left now without my having said so, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. We've only known each other 2 weeks, she whispered, though her heart was racing with joy. Sometimes 2 weeks is enough to recognize what's right. His uninjured hand came up to gently cup her cheek. I'm not asking for promises, just don't leave yet. Give us time to understand what this could be. Zara leaned slightly into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. My uncle is expecting me. Write to him. Explain that you've found employment as a tutor. She raised an eyebrow. A tutor for the ranch children, Vaughn clarified. Santiago's grandchildren, the Mendez family's 5 little ones, the Thompsons' twins, there are a dozen school-age children within riding distance who receive no formal education. Their parents have been asking me to find a teacher for years. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a reason to stay that maintains your independence and makes use of your skills. A small smile curved his lips. I suspect you wouldn't be content just sitting around the ranch house. Zara laughed softly, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. You know me well already, it seems. Not well enough, he murmured, but I'd like the chance to learn more. She reached up, covering his hand with hers where it rested against her cheek. What would people say, a single woman living at your ranch even as a teacher? We have a small cabin about 100 yards from the main house. It was built for the foreman, but Santiago prefers his quarters above the stable. With some fixing up, it would be suitable for a teacher's residence. His eyes twinkled. Perfectly respectable with Magdalena as your chaperone when necessary. You've thought this through? I've thought of little else these past few days. Zara took a deep breath, knowing her next words would alter the course of her life. Yes, I'll stay as your teacher and... She hesitated, then gathered her courage to see where this feeling between us leads. The smile that illuminated Vaughn's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned down until his lips were a breath away from hers. May I? He whispered. In answer, Zara closed the distance, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began gently but quickly deepened as 2 weeks of growing attraction ignited. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, while her hands came to rest on his chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they finally parted, both were breathing faster, their eyes bright with emotion and newfound possibility. "I should warn you," Zara said, a mischievous smile playing at her lips. "I still intend to teach my students that women deserve the right to vote." Vaughn laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Miss Winters." The following weeks transformed Eastwood Ranch in ways no one could have predicted. The small cabin was repaired, painted, and furnished with a brass bed, a writing desk, bookshelves, and other necessities. Zara wrote to her uncle, explaining her decision to remain as the ranch teacher, and to her parents, describing both her accident and her miraculous rescue. She carefully avoided mentioning her growing feelings for Vaughn, knowing such news was best delivered in person. Word spread quickly through the scattered homesteads that Eastwood Ranch would be offering schooling. Within days, Zara found herself with 15 eager pupils ranging in age from 6 to 16. Vaughn cleared out an unused storage building, converting it into a schoolroom complete with desks, a blackboard, and maps of the United States and the world. "This is too much," Zara protested as he showed her the finished space. "The expense is an investment in the future," he interrupted. "These children deserve education as much as any in Boston or New York." The schoolroom quickly became Zara's domain, filled with books, student artwork, and the lively sounds of learning. She taught reading, writing, mathematics, history, and science, but also slipped in lessons about citizenship, rights, and the ongoing struggles for equality that were reshaping the nation in the post-Civil War era. To her delight, Vaughn often visited during lunch breaks, bringing treats for the children and staying to listen to their recitations or admire their work. The children adored him, and the sight of the tall rancher surrounded by eager youngsters showing him their primers and arithmetic made Zara's heart swell with affection. Their courtship progressed with the deliberate pace of two people who recognized they had found something precious and were determined not to rush or damage it. Vaughn brought Zara wildflowers gathered during his rides, took her on gentle excursions to see the beauty of his land, and spent evenings on her cabin porch, talking until the stars blanketed the sky. Their kisses grew more passionate, their embraces more lingering, but both maintained the restraint dictated by propriety and mutual respect. As summer faded into autumn, Zara's parents arrived for a visit, curious about the daughter who had written such glowing letters about a ranch and its owner. Dr. Joseph Winters was a serious man with kind eyes that missed nothing, while Alina Winters possessed the same determined spirit that characterized her daughter. "So you're the man who saved our Zara," Dr. Winters said after the introductions, studying Vaughn with frank assessment. "I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, sir," Vaughn replied honestly. "And fortunate to have her stay on as your teacher," Alina added, her sharp gaze moving between the two young people, noting the way they stood close but not touching, yet somehow intimately connected. "The fortune there is entirely mine, Mrs. Winters," Vaughn said, holding her gaze steadily. "Your daughter has transformed this ranch with her intelligence and dedication. The children are thriving under her care." Over dinner, Zara's parents observed the easy way she and Vaughn anticipated each other's needs, her automatically passing him the salt before he asked, him refilling her water glass without prompting. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on medicine, ranching, politics, and literature. Later, when the men had stepped outside to smoke, Alina cornered her daughter in the kitchen. "You're in love with him," she stated without preamble. Zara didn't bother denying it. "Yes, and he with you, unless I've completely lost my ability to read people." Alina took her daughter's hands. "He's a good man, Zara, I can see that clearly. But are you certain this is the life you want? A ranch in the middle of nowhere, miles from culture and society?" Zara looked out the window to where Vaughn and her father stood, deep in conversation. "I've never been more certain of anything, Mother. Here I'm valued for my mind, not just as a potential wife and mother. I'm building something meaningful with the school and Vaughn." She smiled softly. Vaughn truly sees me and loves what he sees. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Then you have my blessing, though I suspect you weren't waiting for it. It matters to me, Zara assured her. Your approval has always mattered. On the porch, a similar conversation was taking place. Your intentions toward my daughter, Dr. Winters began, puffing on his pipe. I believe I have the right to know them, Vaughn nodded, respecting the older man's directness. I intend to ask for her hand in marriage, sir, with your blessing if possible, without it, if necessary, though I'd prefer the former. Dr. Winters's eyebrows rose at Vaughn's frankness. You love her that much, more than I believed possible, Vaughn admitted. She's changed everything for me. Before Zara, this ranch was just land and cattle, a business, a responsibility. Now it's becoming a community, a place of learning and growth. She's brought light and purpose where there was merely duty. The doctor studied Vaughn for a long moment, then nodded slowly. My Zara has always been headstrong, independent. Since she was a little girl, she's challenged conventions and asked uncomfortable questions. Her mother and I worried those qualities would bring her unhappiness in a world that often punishes women for such traits. He tamped down his pipe, his gaze distant with memory. I once told her she'd need to find a man strong enough to stand beside her, not in front of her. A man secure enough in himself to celebrate her strength rather than feel diminished by it. His eyes returned to Vaughn. I believe she may have found that man. I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of her, sir. See that you do. Dr. Winters extended his hand. You have my blessing, Eastwood. The day after her parents departed, Vaughn asked Zara to ride with him to a special place on his property. The autumn air was crisp, the sky an impossible blue as they rode side by side through golden meadows and stands of aspen trees shimmering with yellow leaves. They came to a rise overlooking a hidden valley where a clear stream wound through lush grass. Beyond rose the majestic mountains, their peaks already dusted with early snow. It's breathtaking, Zara gasped as they dismounted. My father brought my mother here when he asked her to marry him, Vaughn said, taking her hand. He told me it was the most beautiful spot on our land, worthy of the most beautiful question a man can ask. Zara's heart began to race as Vaughn turned to face her fully, his expression serious yet filled with tenderness. Zara Winters, you came into my life unexpectedly, literally falling into my world. A smile touched his lips at the memory. In saving you, I found myself saved as well, from a life half lived, from loneliness I'd grown too accustomed to notice. You challenge me, inspire me, make me laugh, and make me think. I love your brilliant mind, your courageous heart, and your beautiful soul. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Sinking to one knee before her, he opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a perfect sapphire. You do me the great honor of becoming my wife, of building a life, a family, and a legacy with me on this land. Tears blurred Zara's vision as joy overwhelmed her. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Vaughn Eastwood, I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of passion, partnership, and abiding love. Their wedding took place the following spring, when wildflowers carpeted the ranch in a riot of color. The ceremony was held outdoors, with Zara's students forming an honor guard, strewing flower petals along the path where she walked on her father's arm. Santiago stood as Vaughn's best man, his weathered face beaming with approval, while Magdalena sniffed into her handkerchief from the front row. Zara wore a gown of ivory silk that her mother had helped design, with a crown of wildflowers in her honey blonde hair instead of a conventional veil. Vaughn watched her approach with undisguised adoration, his eyes never leaving hers as she moved toward him and their future together. The celebrations lasted well into the night, with ranch hands and neighboring families dancing beneath lanterns strung from the trees. As darkness fell, Vaughn led his bride away from the festivities toward the main house, which was now theirs to share. Happy, Mrs. Eastwood? He asked, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Deliriously so, Mr. Eastwood, she replied, her arms around his neck, her lips finding his in a kiss that spoke of the passion they had restrained until this moment. Later, as they lay entwined in the moonlight filtering through the bedroom curtains, Zara traced the scar that ran across Vaughn's palm, a permanent reminder of the day that had brought them together. "You ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked softly. "If I hadn't fallen, if you hadn't been tracking that mountain lion, if your hand hadn't been injured." Vaughn captured her wandering fingers, bringing them to his lips. "I believe some things are meant to be, Zara. Perhaps not the pain or the danger, but the finding of each other. One way or another, I think our paths would have crossed." "Such a romantic notion from such a practical man," she teased. "You've changed me," he admitted, drawing her closer. "Taught me to see possibilities where before I saw only what was directly in front of me." "And you've changed me," she countered. "Shown me that standing up for what I believe doesn't have to mean standing alone." In the years that followed, Eastwood Ranch flourished, as did the school Zara had established. What began in a converted storage building eventually grew into a proper schoolhouse that served children from miles around. Her reputation as an educator spread, attracting families to settle nearby, knowing their children would receive an excellent education regardless of their background or means. Vaughn expanded his cattle operation, introducing innovative breeding practices and water conservation methods that increased productivity while preserving the land. Together, he and Zara created a model that balanced prosperity with stewardship, a legacy they were proud to build. Their family grew as well. Their first child, a daughter they named Margaret Aliner, arrived a year after their wedding, a precocious girl with her mother's inquisitive mind and her father's steady calm. 2 years later came James Vaughn, a sturdy boy whose first word was horse, and who toddled after his father from the moment he could walk. Their youngest, Victoria Sophia, completed their family a surprise blessing who combined her siblings' traits with infectious laughter all her own. On the 10th anniversary of Zara's fall into the canyon, they returned to the spot now marked with a simple stone monument with their children in tow. "This is where your story began," 12-year-old Margaret asked, peering cautiously over the edge. "You actually fell down there, Mother." "I did," Zara confirmed, "and your father climbed down with an injured hand to rescue me." "Even though you were strangers?" 9-year-old James looked impressed. "Even then," Vaughn replied, his arm around Zara's waist. "Though something in my heart must have known she wasn't truly a stranger, but the other half of my soul I hadn't yet met." "That's so romantic," Margaret sighed, while James rolled his eyes in the way of boys who publicly disdained romance while secretly being moved by it. Little Victoria, just 5, slipped her hand into her father's. "Were you scared, Papa?" Vaughn knelt to her level, his expression serious. "I was terrified, sweet pea, but sometimes the most important things we do in life are the ones that frighten us the most." "Like when I jumped off the diving rock into the swimming hole?" she asked earnestly. He laughed. "Something like that, but even more important." As they rode home together, Zara looked around at the family and the life they had created, the children laughing as they raced ahead on their ponies. The ranch buildings visible in the distance, the land stretching out around them, wild and beautiful and home. No regrets. Vaughn asked quietly, reading her thoughtful expression. She turned to him, her blue eyes as clear and bright as the day they'd met, her love for him only deepened by the decade they'd shared. "Not one," she replied, reaching across to take his hand, the one that still bore the scar from saving her. "Every step, every moment has led us here. How could I regret any of it?" He brought her hand to his lips, kissing it reverently. "I thank God every day for that rattlesnake." Zara laughed, the sound carrying on the wind. "Only you would be grateful for a venomous reptile, Vaughn Eastwood." "It brought you to me," he said simply. "For that, I'd thank the devil himself." As they crested the final hill before their ranch, the setting sun bathed everything in golden light, the house they had expanded to accommodate their growing family. The schoolhouse with its bell tower, the barns and corrals where their livelihood thrived. But most precious of all were the people who waited to welcome them home, Magdalena, now gray but still formidable in her kitchen domain. Santiago, stooped with age but still dispensing wisdom from his rocking chair on the porch. The ranch hands and their families, the students and their parents, all part of the community that had grown around the foundation of Vaughn and Zara's love. "Look," Zara said softly, pointing to where a double rainbow had appeared arching over their land. "A promise for the future." "Our future," Vaughn agreed, spurring his horse forward toward home, his wife beside him as she had been and would be through all the seasons of their lives together. And in the distance, the canyon where their story began caught the last rays of the setting sun, its walls glowing crimson, no longer a place of danger, but a monument to the courage, sacrifice, and love that had transformed two lives and, in doing so, created a legacy that would endure for generations to come.